Hi, this is Matt Barber, and you're listening to Chuck versus the Podcast.
Hi, my name is Graham Jones, but you can call me Gray. This is my show. It's about Chuck. It's filled with interviews, the latest news, crazy co-hosts, and spoilers that'll make your day. Oh, wait, I need to go back. I host these TV nights. They used to be pretty boring, but everything changed when I found NBC's new show, Chuck. Pretty soon, my TV night got pretty crowded. Guys I didn't even know were showing up the door. Big, important guys. Really scary, nasty, get killed for hosting them guys. Next thing I know, these super episodes are downloaded into my brain, which means every moment of my life, I'm thinking about Chuck. ChuckTV.net sent their top people to protect me. That's Mel and Liz. They're pretty zany. They co-host with me now, as a cover. So now I must welcome you to Chuck versus the Podcast, the #1 TV podcast for NBC's Chuck. This is Gray.
This is Mel.
And you're listening to Chuck versus the Podcast, episode 33 for Friday, December 4th, 2009. Liz is off this time. She's moving this weekend, but she is here in spirit. As a matter of fact, if you're in the Chicago area and you want to help her out with her move this weekend, send an email to mail@chuckpodcast.com.
And we'll hook you up.
Yeah, and she'd love the help, I'm sure. But in today's podcast, we have my interview with Matt Barber, the first in our series of editor interviews. And we also have listener emails, glad to have them back, and the latest developments in the world of Chuck.
That's right. To start off, we put together a list of the Chuck folks who are on Twitter, including the latest edition, Adam Baldwin. You can find the full list over at chucktv.net and start interacting with some of the folks over there on Twitter.
Mm-hmm. And it's actually pretty fun to see the little debates that go on. I know Ali Adler and Adam Baldwin had a little contest to see who would hit 10,000 first. Now, I don't think either of them have yet. Speaking of Twitter and social media, Adam and Zach both posted behind-the-scenes photos from the Season 3 cast photo shoot on their Twitter and Facebook accounts. You can find those at chucktv.net as well, and it's really fun watching those guys. It's literally just as it happens, you get the photos, and it's really cool. Yeah,
it's really awesome that they're reaching out to the fans like that and keeping us up to date during the not so long now, but what's been a fairly long hiatus. So we really appreciate them taking the extra time to do that.
Yeah. And as I mentioned before, we've got some listener emails. And I think it's great now that Chuck is going to be on the screen pretty soon. I think it's getting people's interest up again. And it's really exciting to get emails from you. So please do send them in. And also, something that I noticed is that we're starting to get emails from people who are just now discovering Chuck, which is really exciting.
It is. It is. It surprises me sometimes that we're getting ready to begin season 3 and people are just finding the show. But at the same time, it's really exciting to have those new enthusiastic fans coming on board and saying, "Oh my gosh, why didn't you guys tell me about this show before?" Or, they're discovering it for the first time and you kind of get to relive it with them.
Yeah. And make sure if you know any friends who are Chuck fans, make sure you tell them about the podcast. They don't necessarily know about the podcast. They don't necessarily know about chucktv.net. So make sure you share with them about the fan resources that are available. Mm-hmm. But we're going to roll right in with Daniel from Midland, Texas. He says, "Hi, this is Daniel from Midland, Texas. I started your podcast and I'm hooked. I love hearing all your interviews with the cast and crew and all the news, ideas, and speculations that y'all have about our favorite nerd herder. Speaking of ideas, I had what I think is a good one for Casey. Since we have seen Chuck's and Sarah's dads, I think we should see Casey's mom and or dad. You could have Betty White or Deborah Jo Rupp as Casey's mom, and she could be a very June Cleaver. And whenever Casey grunts or whatever, she just treats him like a 5-year-old. That'd be really fun. And have Kurtwood Smith as his dad. And Casey always feels inadequate. That would be interesting."
You know, you kind of get the feeling that that's the sort of experience he had as a child, the fat kid in the corner comment and, being upset because he felt like he was being left out by Chuck and Sarah were leaving him out. Mm-hmm. So it would be interesting to meet his parents. That's for sure.
Well, I love that Christmas episode when he called home.
I know. It's Johnny Boy.
Yeah.
But you know what? I have a speculation that as awesome as Casey is and, his grunts that make us chuckle and his competence with almost everything, I suspect that he's actually like the youngest of 5 boys, and all the other guys, all his brothers are these really awesome in their own field, and he feels somewhat inadequate, and so that's why he went into the military. And that's my spec.
Yeah. Oh, there's lots of fun angles you could take.
Because Johnny Boy, doesn't that sound like he's the baby of the family?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. You want to roll with the next one?
I do. This is from Maple Man, and he says, "Hello, Gray, Mel, and Liz. Thank you for all the amazing podcasts on Chuck versus the Podcast. As I am new to all this podcast stuff, I love your podcast. I will vote for your podcast as best podcast. I live in Australia, and I love the Chuck TV show. Even now, my nickname is Maple Man. I like Canada second. I like Canada. It's the second best country next to Australia, and that's from FP 2009 or Maple Man."
Gee, thanks.
I thought you'd like that.
Yeah. Actually,
Canada's the second best country.
Interestingly enough, Canada and Australia are kind of like sister countries. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of similarities between the two. And I've heard, I've never been there, but I've heard when you go there, they have, even just the people are very similar to Canadians. So that could be where he got that from.
Could be.
Mm-hmm. Well, next is Timon or Timon. Hey, my name is Timon, and I love your podcast show about Chuck. Really respect, sorry for my bad English, but I live in the Netherlands. And my question is to all of you, what is your favorite Chuck character? Mine is Adam Baldwin as John Casey. I'd like to hear from you if you can, and good luck with your website. It's really great looking. Thanks for that. I subscribed today at yvonnestrahovski.net, and of course, Mel and Liz run that site as well. Good luck and greets from the Netherlands. And so, Timon, I want to thank you for your message. Actually, I have a cousin who lived in the Netherlands for quite a while, but it's great to have fans from really down under, I guess. In French, they say Pays-Bas for Netherlands, as in the low country.
You're showing off now.
Yeah.
Well, so who is your favorite character?
Boy. It's got to be Chuck for me. I don't want to be lame, but the whole reason I even started watching the show is I just really identified with his character. Mm-hmm. But, the Chuck show is all about interplay between all the characters, so I don't think it would be what it is without the great other characters, but he would have to be my favorite.
Same here. It's called Chuck for a reason.
Yeah.
And he's the reason I was interested in it in the first place. And then Adam Baldwin, that casting was just the icing on the cake. So, And of course, Yvonne Strahovski's been a revelation, and Sarah Lancaster and Ryan McPartlin and all, the Bymore crew, like you said, everybody. It's about the interaction between them all. But it's Chuck for me.
Mm-hmm. And next, I'm just going to rifle through a few items that came up on Twitter. One of them was that people were wondering if we were planning on doing an interactive podcast with Vic Sahai. And we did want to make it clear that not all of our interviews will be interactive. We had the great opportunity to do that with a few people so far, and we definitely plan more in the future, but there will be a lot of traditional interviews as well. And I want to thank you so much if you sent birthday wishes for me. It was my birthday last week, and I got just a flood of encouragement from Twitter and on email. And so that's very, very much appreciated. And last item that came in was people have had some connection problems with the podcast. And if you have had connection problems and somehow managed to listen to this podcast, it's possible that you may need to adjust some network settings on your computer. If you'd like to send an email to mail@chuckpodcast.com, I can give you a little more information about that. Also, you may try, if you're having trouble connecting on iTunes, unsubscribing and then resubscribing should fix it. And now we're going to roll into the interview I had with Matt Barber before my trip to LA. So this was a while back, and I'm glad we can finally bring it to you now. It's a great interview. This is Gray with Chuck versus the Podcast, and I'm here with editor Matt Barber. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing great here in sunny Burbank, California.
I wish. Actually, Toronto is not too bad right now. We had a really cool summer, and it's finally repenting. and becoming a summer in time for the fall.
That's nice. We had an unrelenting summer with all this smoke and the fires, and now the haze is clearing. We can run again.
Burbank is sort of northish LA. Did you get much of that smoke?
Oh yeah. My house is like a 10-minute drive from the fire, so
wow.
we weren't threatened at all, but we just got all the smoke.
Wow. Well, now that actually leads into my first question: is did you grow up in that area, or did you grow up somewhere else?
No, actually, I grew up in San Jose, California, in Silicon Valley, and I did watch I watched the transformation. As we went from the last few orchards around our house got bought up and turned into condos and office buildings and whatnot. But I spent the first 22 years there, and after I got married, moved when I was 23, 24, moved down to LA to pursue my dream of being in film and TV.
So you always wanted to do film and TV?
No, I mean I say that like the dream, but the dream came really late. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and to be honest, up until I was like 17, I seriously wanted to be an astronaut.
Oh yeah, me too actually.
Funny, yeah. I watched Space Camp all the time, and I dreamed about going to Space Camp, and I actually there was a career day in our sophomore year that I spent at Moffett Field. I went out to NASA out there and checked out the wind tunnel, and so I was like, okay, maybe I need to become an engineer, because I'm not. I learned I'm not physically fit enough to be part of the military. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, okay, I'll become an engineer, and then I took calculus, and up to this point, I was like an A student in math and science, and then I got a C in calculus.
Oh yeah,
and that's when the switch happened.
Oh yeah. Actually, if you read my latest blog post, I talked all about that. I started out. Actually, I was a really good math student as well, and wanted to be an astronaut. And then when I was in the 9th grade, the Challenger blew up, and if you remember that time, all of a sudden funding just got totally yanked from the space program. So that's when I read George Lucas's biography, Skywalking, and I thought that would be pretty cool. So that's when it started for me. Nice.
And so it was 9th grade. It took me a couple more years, because I always loved movies, and I loved like working in any kind of storytelling capacity. I did I'm a terrible actor, but I did some stage stuff at school, some plays, and I always had a good time doing it, but I never thought about actually working on it as a career. And then I had a friend who was working in radio, and he was doing this college radio station over at San Jose State. Mm-hmm. And I thought that would be kind of interesting. I'd love to do, I love music, and I love the community aspect of radio. So I signed up and started helping out volunteering at the radio station. Mm-hmm.
Now, were you going to that college?
Yeah, I went to San Jose State. Mm-hmm. As I was doing the radio program, I'm like, this is great. I'd love to do this. So I joined the program, and it was an all-in-one sort of radio, television, and film program. Mm-hmm. And we started to learn all aspects of it. And as I was doing the radio, I had a couple radio shows, really loving it. I started doing internships out in the real world, and I hated it.
Oh yeah,
I hated it. I hated where the direction radio was going. Very few people make a decent living in radio, and it's all being consolidated and commercialized. I mean, TV and film are, they're commercial too, but it was crazy to have, one of the core things about radio for me is the community aspect. Mm-hmm. And we'd have DJs who are finishing up their shift, and they go record another program for San Diego, or some other town, and they would pretend as if they were there, and they were and they'd say, like, hey, I was just over at Stinky's bar over here, and I met this dude, and he said he would drink his own urine. And just like, really? And then they got the program manager to come in and pretend to drink his own urine. I'm just like, this, it was one of those radio stations.
Edifying stuff.
Yeah, but the urine drinking aside, I'm just like, really, you're gonna pretend like you're there? At least be like Howard Stern and these guys. Like, we're up here in this other place, and we're okay with that. Mm-hmm.
So was Pump Up the Volume a key influence?
No. Unfortunately, no. But
no. Well, actually, tell you this, podcasting is I think where that spirit has made a transition to, because it's not commercialized and it's very much sort of down to earth.
I agree. It's very communal, and the nice thing, that's one of the great things about the internet and social networking is that, while you may not have the reach of a lot of these radio stations anymore, as far as the numbers go, you're targeting your niche audience, and everyone, who likes this one certain thing can get together and talk about it, and feel like they are a part of something, and talk to other people that enjoy those things, and I think that's a fabulous thing.
Mm-hmm. So you hated the practical side of working in radio. So at what point did you say TV's the thing?
Well, it's probably my sophomore year in college, or Well, I took a little while. I had to support myself through college, so I did about 5.5 years of college. So while I was in, because I was in that program that was radio, television, and film, I was able to experience some of the other aspects. And so the internship for the radio station didn't like it, so I switched and got an internship at a local, it was a corporate video company. We did industrials and some Discovery Channel documentaries, and I loved it. I loved it. And I was able to do every aspect of production. We were a small team. There was only 7 of us on the team, so I went from boom operator to applying makeup to sometimes doing some camera work to setting up lights to then coming back and doing assistant editing work and learning. And that's where I really learned the Avid. And the Avid, which is one of our main tools for cutting picture. And so I really loved it. So I really sort of dove head in, and I found that I had a real knack for that visual medium, and I realized it was because I was also my minor was also music, so music recording to be specific. So I learned Pro Tools, and I learned how to record bands and set up mics and everything. And while I had a good time doing that, it didn't have the intense focus for me that TV and film did, and I realized that I really gravitated towards telling a visual story, and that was where my interest lied. So I poured myself, wholeheartedly at that point into everything, and I started taking more film classes, and I took my first sort of Bolex, 16 millimeter film class, and we had to actually this school they wanted you to learn how to do things the hard way.
So, oh yeah.
So
I went to one of those too.
Cut our own negative.
Yeah. Oh, you cut your own negative.
Yeah, we had to cut it, and it was actually positive, to be honest. It was since it was Bolex, we just shot positive film, but we had to cut it and splice it together and then project it ourselves, and it was very interesting. But that project won me an award at school for directing, and I got into the local film festival for that, and that at that point, bug was it fully bitten me. I'm like, this is what I want to do. Great.
And so, at what point did you your first IMDb credit is Crime and Punishment in 2002? At what point did that transition into full series work?
Well, after I moved down here, I sort of puttered around, took some internships. I interned for a development producer, the guy who used to work for Oliver Stone, and he also produced Garden State, amongst other movies. And I spent 9 months with him just reading scripts and learning the lay of the land. At the same time, there's a ACE, which is kind of like an Editors Guild. It's not the Editors Guild, but it's kind of like an association. And where Norman Buckley won the award for Chuck a couple years back. They have an internship program, which before I came down, I really researched looking for internships because I wasn't sure if I wanted to do editing because I really enjoyed it, but wasn't quite sure. So I looked at internship programs, and the one that was the most successful to me was the one through ACE. So I had applied. And I got really close. They choose 2 people. They now choose 3. And I like to say I was the one that sort of caused them to rethink their policy. But so they picked 9 people out of all their applicants, interviewed them, and then they picked 2 people out of that.
Wow.
And the way I've heard it is that it came down to 1 vote. There was 2 people debating whether they should pick me, and they went the other way. So
wow.
But in the end, it worked out because I was able, I made a great impression with them, and all the editors that were on the panel, they took me under their wing and let me come in into their cutting room and meet their assistants. And I was hanging out with a wonderful editor, Gib Jaffe, who was cutting The Guardian at the time. We were sitting there talking, and he gets a phone call from another editor, a friend of his, and he says, "I'm looking for an assistant. I just had to let mine go. Do you know anyone?" And he says, "Hey, I happen to have someone right here."
Wow.
So I went down, I interviewed, I got the job, and that was Crime and Punishment.
Great.
And that was for another wonderful editor, Jason Rosenfield, who's done a lot of reality and documentary work. And he really started showing me the ropes and He started teaching me about editing and the importance of of looks and telling stories with the eyes. That was his big focus and the big thing that I took away from him. So that was Crime and Punishment. That was it was a Law and Order show, but it was a reality show. And if any of you guys know that how difficult it is sometimes to work on reality TV, we had like 200 hours of footage at times.
Wow. For a single episode?
For a single episode.
Wow. Most I've had is 86.
Yeah, that's tough to wrangle.
Yeah.
200. I mean, granted, a lot of it was, we had 4 camera setups in the courtroom, and sometimes these court cases would go on for a week or two, and 4 hours, or four cameras rolling for 6 hours a day. That's a lot of footage.
Yeah. So you worked with Jason Rosenfield as well on Trace Evidence? Yeah,
that was the Henry Lee, who was the main sort of crime scene investigator for O.J. Simpson, and the guy who created the series, he had worked with him before, like helping him write a book or something like that. I don't remember; it was a while ago, but he developed a series for, I think it was Court TV or something like that, and so that was the pilot that that I worked on with Jason Rosenfield. He cut the pilot, and I was working alongside him, and that was actually my first Final Cut Pro project. And,
oh yeah.
Yeah, and Jason the editor didn't know Final Cut Pro at the time, so and that's part of the deal. So I actually taught him how to use Final Cut Pro in a series of like 2 weeks, and we got him up to speed, and he was cutting away.
Wow.
So
yeah, we use Final Cut a lot up here in Toronto. I've heard that there's not a lot of shows in LA that use Final Cut, but you'd say that's not the truth?
No, there are a number of like smaller productions that use Final Cut Pro. There's an equipment survey that ACE does, the ACE does, where they, and granted these are people who are in the membership, and they tend to work on more union projects.
Yeah. So
of the larger productions, it's about Final Cut Pro is about 10% penetration.
Oh, okay. So that's about the same as here.
Yeah, so it's increasing, and to be honest, there's been other shows. Even on the OC, we talked about it for a little bit, and here we've bantied it about, but it's such a large changeover, that it's hard to undertake in the middle of a series. It's something that's, I think, best done at the beginning of a series. When you can set up your structure and your file structure, and we have all these, we have hours and hours of stock footage and music and everything and sound effects that we'd have to redo if we had to do a switch over.
Yeah. So then after that, you did a few features as well.
Yes. Well, I did. Well, I've done 2. Like after Henry Lee, the Trace Evidence show, I told myself I don't want to do reality anymore. I want to make a transition into narrative. So we had some money saved up, my wife and I stopped taking any work in that vicinity, and did a few pickup jobs here and there. And then a buddy of mine, actually the guy who beat me out in the ACE internship, we stayed friends, and we've passed work back and forth to each other a number of times. He was going on to another project, and he'd been working on this wonderful sci-fi movie called Frankenfish.
Oh, okay.
And Frankenfish it was quite an experience. The editor there, he had cut, I don't know if you remember that movie UHF back in the day. Yes, that was his claim to fame, and knowing Kramer before Kramer became Kramer. But he was a funny guy, and this movie was it was crazy, but it was fun as well. It was directed by Mark DePay, who was the visual effects supervisor for Jurassic Park and also directed Spawn.
Yeah.
The infamous Spawn.
Uh-huh.
So I worked on that for about 6 weeks, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got a call from Norman Buckley.
Mm-hmm.
And
had you met Norman before?
No, I hadn't. And actually, no. Back up. I'd gotten a call from someone at ACE saying that the OC was looking for an assistant.
Mm-hmm.
So I sent my resume over, and I got a call. That's when I got a call from Norman. And Norman looked at my resume and said, it's like, you're a little overqualified. We're actually looking for an intern. I'm like, oh, okay. At that point, I was done with internships, and I had to work.
Yeah.
But he said, I'll keep your resume on file, which, usually means we'll never call you back.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, that was, too bad. I'll just stick on Frankenfish.
Mm-hmm.
And then 6 weeks after that, he gave me a call and said, Tim Good, who's now an editor on Gossip Girl, he was the assistant at the time.
Mm-hmm.
He was going off to work on a pilot with Stephanie Savage.
Mm-hmm.
And they needed someone to fill in for a few weeks. So I'm like, sure, I'll take it. So I left Frankenfish and went and worked on the OC for a few weeks, and had a great time. And it was fun. I mean, I was totally green, on the whole scripted world.
Mm-hmm.
And because TV and film, even like independent film like Frankenfish, is way different from the speed at which you need to work on a television show.
Yeah.
But I fit in really quickly, and they really liked me. And when the next season rolled around, they got picked back up for season 2. And Tim Good went over to the Mountain to be an editor full time.
Mm-hmm.
I slipped into his position.
Great.
So they brought me back, and the rest is history, really. I mean, I assisted with Jeff Granzow and Susan Godfrey for a number of years, but throughout that whole time, Norman, who, as you know from the previous podcast, he's really into education and teaching people about the process of editing and storytelling in general. And he's wonderful. He's a very good teacher.
Mm-hmm.
He's a very strict teacher.
Oh yeah.
Yes, he will push you and push you and push you until it just sort of clicks into place. So, I spent the next couple of years under his tutelage, and he really taught me the ropes and great benefit because of it.
Great. Oh yeah, he definitely seems that way. And now, at what point did you make the transition to full editor for the OC?
Well, it was when Norman had started to direct. He was prepping for his first episode, and part of the deal is he was still editing at the time. So there was going to be a little period where he couldn't edit and direct at the exact same time. So they gave me he allowed me to have a shared episode with him.
Mm-hmm.
Which happened to be Robbie Duncan McNeil's episode.
Oh, cool.
So the funny thing is that my first episode was working with Robbie, and what a great guy to have your first episode with. He's such a fabulous director and a very nice guy to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And so Norman got swamped with the directing stuff. And so I ended up cutting the whole episode. So instead of getting a shared credit, I got the whole credit, which was
cool.
Which was very kind of them. I was very of course I was very happy and thrilled. They were very happy with my work. So I did that one episode, and then the 4th season rolled around, and we lost one of our editors. Went off to do Grey's Anatomy. That's Matt Ramsey,
mm-hmm.
and so we had another spot open. And we brought someone else in who didn't really work out, and so so they let that person go, and they decided to give me a shot because they
mm-hmm.
liked the work I did on the one episode. I mean, it was risky because I had only done one,
yeah.
And I had cut a feature film, the summer before, but they gave me the shot, and it worked out great.
Great.
I worked with Patrick Norris, who's also one of our directors on Chuck.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my first time working with him, and we turned out a really great episode, and so I think I did 5 episodes in total on the OC,
mm-hmm.
and that sort of cemented my place in the Schwartz empire.
In Wonderland.
In Wonderland, exactly.
Yeah. And so, at what point did you enter the Chuck universe?
Well, initially, I remember on season 4 of the OC, there was talk about these pilots that Josh had. One of them was Gossip Girl, and the other one was this episode, this series called Chuck. And didn't know really anything about it. And I asked one of the writer's assistants to email me the script because I wanted to take a look at it. And
mm-hmm.
This was back in February 2007.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. I was going through my emails, and I save all my emails. So I went back to my emails. And I'm like, when was the first mention of Chuck in my life? It was like February 2007. And that's where we got the script, which was a different version of the script at the time.
Oh yeah.
And I read it, and I fell in love with it immediately. I'm like, this is the show for me.
Oh yeah.
It hits everything that I love. You got a little bit of genre, like spy story. You have the comedy with the Buy More guys. You have the drama and the romantic side with Chuck and Sarah. And this was and I fell in love with them. Like this is a show I want to work on.
Mm-hmm.
And Josh was very kind, and he's also very loyal, and he made sure that but we all knew that with these 2 shows going that we'd be taken care of. So now granted, I didn't want to press myself and say I have less work on this show because Norman was brought on to cut the pilot.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just like whatever works out, if I can work, I'll be happy. But it just so happens that Norman asked me if I wanted to be the assistant on the pilot. Knowing that one, I had never cut a pilot, so I never worked on a pilot, so it'd be a good experience to experience it. Because the pilot schedule is, if you think TV is crazy, pilots are even crazier.
Oh yeah.
Because you're essentially like the thing with the TV series is like once you get the tone going, once you get you establish the look and the sort of cutting pattern, it's not that it's easy, but at least you have a template to work off of.
Yeah.
But when you're creating something from pure scratch, and this show, as you know, it's a delicate balance. We can go too far goofy, or we can go too spy and too scary, and you just have to have the right balance of like that romance, drama, comedy in the spy world.
Mm-hmm.
And so the pilot was really spent like trying to like flesh that out, and we spent a lot of time, a lot of hours. And that was I've slept at work a few times. And that was one of the times.
Oh yeah.
I had to we had a big presentation I think for NBC or something, and we had to get a bunch of sound work done. So I just I worked until like 3 a.m., slept for 2 hours, woke back up and finished up all my work, so we could get done on time.
I've done lots of those.
But yeah, so the pilot, Norman asked me if I wanted to do that. I said, yeah, that'd be great. And with the idea that I would fold into the editor spot, I'd be the first one off,
mm-hmm.
after Norman. He wanted to work on the first episode as well, just because the first episode of the series is usually just as hard as the pilot because you have to duplicate what you just did. And as you know, it's like that episode was nearly as big, with all the helicopter stuff
that
went on. It was nuts. So Norman worked on that episode for a while, and then I came on to do Chuck versus the Tango.
Yeah, and Wookiee as well was pretty close after that, right?
Yeah. Well, this was a crazy time period. It's like they had us working. They wanted us to just be a 2-editor rotation.
Wow.
And this is something the studio does a lot. They're trying to save money, so they push for the show to be 2 editors. And we all know that, especially on a show like this, we knew that wasn't going to be possible, but we still tried. So there was a time when I was working on 3 episodes. Like Norman, his directing career was just kicking off around that point. So he was working on the first, what I call the first episode is really the first episode after the pilot.
Yeah.
And he was working on that, but you know, we were working on it for a long time, just because there were a lot of sequences that needed to be fleshed out, and we'd worked on it so long that he had other commitments coming up, so he had to leave. So I took over that, you know, the end of the episode. I worked on it for you know, maybe a week, just finishing up and doing little notes and stuff. At the same time, I was, you know, we did Tango, which was was our very successful episode for us.
Yeah.
You know, we really found our tone, and we really found where we needed to be, you know, and it all came together really quickly. And then episode 3 was, you know, the next episode in the shooting order was Sizzling Shrimp, and then Tango. Wookiee. Yeah, the Wookiee. So I was still working on Chuck versus the Helicopter, and then the Tango episode was pretty good shape, but there's still some stuff to work on. And then Wookiee started rolling around. And I've never experienced that. You know, it was a balancing act. It really was a balancing act, and that was the point where we realized we need a third header. Wow. And so we brought on, you know, Kevin Mock, and Kevin came in and took over Chuck versus the Icelandic Archer. That was his first episode. Mm-hmm. Wow. But yeah, it was a crazy time in those first few days, and the funny thing is like, you know, because we switched the order of how the episodes aired. Originally it was supposed to be Tango, then Sizzling Shrimp, and then Wookiee. Mm-hmm. But Sizzling Shrimp had some issues that they were working out too, so they swapped those two episodes around. So essentially, I ended up working on the first 4 episodes in a row. Wow. You know, which is like, oh, that's interesting. But yeah, so I'm glad that we've moved beyond those days, and that we're now in the 3-editor rotation. Now it's still crazy, you know, and I'm still working on 2 episodes at once right now. The first episode of season 3 is still, you know, we're getting pieces in as we speak, and the first dailies for episode 4 just started rolling in yesterday. Wow.
And so you were really, really busy, and then all of a sudden the writer's strike happened. Yeah. What was that like?
The writer's strike. It was you know, it was a bit disheartening, because the momentum of the show, it was, you know, we were just building. You know, we were a new show, and we were just finding ourselves. You know, as many of you know, and you know, there were a lot of great episodes in season 1, but it wasn't until the second half that we really started. You know, once the ring came into play and Bryce came back, I think that's when the show really started gaining momentum and finding itself. And then we had to stop. And it was so disheartening. It was so disheartening. And I mean, even for the writers, I mean, no one really wanted to strike. And it was just one of those times where, you know, we had to deal with the reality of the situation. A lot of shows, you know, lost their momentum, and it changed the landscape of TV, you know, for, you know, I don't know. I still don't think we've fully recovered from it. Yeah. But you know, we were on hiatus for it was a good like 4 or 5 months, if I recall correctly. Yeah. And we were, you know, we had no idea, you know, if and when we were coming back. You know, if who was going to come back on the show. As far as, you know, the cast are all, you know, sort of locked in with contracts, but you know, the crew, they come and go as needed, and as they find work. And you know, I was hoping that I would come back, and I was hoping that I could, you know, that I could survive long enough to be able to come back to Chuck. Unfortunately, I was able to, and I'm thankful I did, because season 2 was a great season. It's probably one of my favorite seasons of TV I've ever, you know, been involved with. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, season 2 is great. I mean, not that season 1 wasn't, but you're really going on all cylinders in season 2.
Yeah, but the great thing is, I mean, having that time off, you know, because I still like telling my own stories, and I sort of, you know, direct as a hobby and do some writing on the side. I was able to work on a short film and direct a short film with a friend of mine over the break, and we got a lot of help from some Chuck people, including Tony Hale, who we were talking to at the time when we were talking to him about it. Mm-hmm. You know, we were at lunch, and he got a text. He goes, "Oh, looks like I just got an offer on Chuck." I'm like, "Funny enough, I work on Chuck." You know, So we were there when Tony Hale was at least extended the offer, in person, which was kind of funny. So he worked on our show and on our film, as well as some other, like Scott Krinsky also helped out, and and some other Chuck crew people helped out on this short. So while we weren't working on the show that we loved, we were able to do some other projects that that were very fun, and it was a good time.
And that was Weathered?
That was Weathered, correct.
Mm-hmm. Which is, did I hear right that even won an award already?
Yeah, we were out in Indianapolis, their international film festival out there, and we won an audience award. And there were 75 short films, I think. Out of all of them, we had the most votes. Apparently, it was a landslide.
Cool.
So, which was very. It was very exhilarating too. The audience award is always the toughest one because, to resonate with all those people, after all those films, it's a difficult task, and we were very humbled by the experience.
Yeah. So, and then came the end of season 2, and that whole time unsure of renewal. So
I know that seems to be our MO. Yeah, it was. And the season 2 was, that finale, man. We just, after that finale, we're like, how can we not come back?
Oh, I know.
How can we not come back? And we were debating on whether to have that to be continued card up.
Oh, yeah.
Because I remember reading the message boards. I remember after Chuck got the intersect out of his head, and everyone's like, if Chuck doesn't come back, this will be the perfect series end. He's like, Chuck and Sarah can get together. He no longer has intersect. He's back with his dad. It's perfect. Just wrap up.
Uh-huh.
And I kept thinking, wait till you see the finale. Wait till you see the finale. You're gonna be jumping out of your seats as Chris Fiak said, you're throwing your TV out the window. And man, we were debating whether to put that to be continued card. We didn't want to be presumptuous, but at the same time, it's like, what else can you do? I mean, whether you put that card up there or not, you're essentially saying to be continued.
Yeah.
And we were waiting on the edge of our seats. It was up until like the last day. Like I got Sunday before the upfronts, and upfronts is when the shows, the TV, the networks announce all their new shows. Mm-hmm. And we were waiting up until that Sunday, the Sunday before. They were going to announce on Monday, and that's when we got the text message that we got picked up.
Wow.
And it was intense, because we all loved the show. We all wanted to come back. We all wanted to work,
Yeah.
And especially on a show that we love. I mean, I know with all the shows and the series out there. I mean, I'll be thankful to be working, 20 years from now. But I doubt that I'll be on a show that I love this much.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe it'll come again. Maybe I'll be fortunate, but. I'm also realizing that to be on a show like this, one that I love so dearly, one that I would spend this time and money putting up a little website to help the effort of get Chuck renewed.
Yeah.
I doubt I'll have that experience again.
Yeah. So what was your response to seeing the fans' support in that renewal campaign?
It's funny. I was while we were waiting to get picked up, I worked on this pilot called Human Target, which will be on Fox, I think, in January or something like
cool.
that. But who was the executive producer on that is John Steinberg, who did Jericho.
Mm-hmm.
And he was telling about his experience on Jericho, and they had a similar sort of fan support, where they're sending in, I think it was peanuts or something, when they're waiting to be renewed. And,
yeah.
And he's created a lot of great relationships with his fans through it. There's this one guy who's a really amazing graphic designer who he met through just the fan stuff, and now he's like helping them out with doing graphics for his new TV series.
Oh, great!
Which is great. But it's interesting to see it's great to see when the fans have a connection with a show, and you just. I don't know. It emboldens you. It gives you. It gave me heart. I'm just like, we got to come back, and not only that I have to come back on Chuck. I have to do whatever I can and hold out, and make sure I can come back. Because it was like, how can I, like, be a part of this sort of fan force, And then I was out there, with, buying Subway sandwiches. I was doing all that stuff, as a fan of the show. It's like, how can I not return to this great show, And I hope that the show does return. So when I think it was vindicating, because we know that there's a lot of people out there that love the show. We just the Nielsen numbers just never sort of fall in our favor, which makes it hard. So to have that sort of support shows us that we're right. So we know that we're doing something good that people love, and we want to keep doing that.
Yeah. Well, hopefully the numbers will go up with lots of continued efforts by the fans.
These days, TV is changing so fast, and everything is migrating online, and the broadcast model is slowly deteriorating. It'll be interesting to see what TV looks like in 10 years.
Yeah. We're coming close to the end here, but do you have any kind of favorite stories or anything you'd like to share from the first 2 seasons, or even just how things are looking now? Obviously, no spoilers.
The first couple episodes, like I said, I think my first reaction, when I read the pilot, it's like when you read something and then you start to see these characters come out. They're always a little different. Like when I first read Casey, I pictured more of like a Vinnie Jones character. Big, burly, and just he's supposed to be a burnout, And then I saw Adam Baldwin. I'm just like, that's an interesting choice. And then he grunted, and then I fell in love. After his first grunt, I'm like, I have a man crush on that guy. He's hilarious. He was perfect.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, it's always interesting to see how these characters sort of come and they grow into themselves. And I think this season is going to be, we're growing up. As we know, Chuck has these abilities now, and how is that going to play out in his Buy More world, in his relationship with his sister and his new brother-in-law, and now Awesome is starting to get mixed up on all of it, and how's that all going to play out, and at the same time keeping the core relationship between Sarah and Chuck going, and all the ups and downs, and it's hard to have a relationship when you're spies.
Yeah,
it's just hard. So this season is going to be fun already. I'm having a blast, and there's some great fights and some great comedic moments, and I wish I could tell you guys all about it, but unless I get smacked down by someone above me, I will keep mum.
Yeah, well, we definitely can't wait to see it. Now, so transitioning toward the future, we of course hope that Chuck is on for many more seasons. But where do you see yourself going after that?
I don't know. I like to sort of keep my options open and just sort of go with the flow, and it's worked out so far. You never know what because this is a lot of this talent is relationship based, and as you know, it's like who you know is important, and more so out of like people trust you if they know you, and all my jobs have come through people that I know one way or the other. I'm keeping all my options open. I would love to, eventually I'd love to, I have some ideas for some movies I'd love to write and direct. Maybe someday down the road. But I'm still relatively young, and I still have a lot to learn about the art of filmmaking and storytelling. So I'm going to keep practicing and keep probably making short films and and editing on hopefully great shows that I love, and that's my hope. It's like keep editing, and I'll keep doing my hobbies on the side of directing, and we'll see where it all goes.
That's great. And any projects or charities that you'd like us to promote for you?
There is one charity I'd like to promote, which is stopthetraffic.org. That's traffic with a K. It's an organization designed to stop human trafficking, and they have a huge campaign right now to raise awareness about child labor in the cocoa fields, and a lot of the chocolate companies, especially Hershey's, that employ or buy chocolate from these companies that employ child labor. They're trying to get out the word. So that's stopthetraffic.org, traffic with a K.
Great. Well, we'll definitely mention that and include a link in the podcast.
Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah. Great. So that's all I have, unless there's anything you feel like adding.
Actually, I was going to say there was a couple things you had mentioned about like scenes, deleted scenes, and stuff like that. There's a couple scenes that we were sad to see go from the finale last year, but it's just one of those situations where we had the episodes were running a little long and we need to cut something out. But there's this one scene in the courtyard when Ellie is having her party, and they have a bouquet toss. Mm-hmm. And there's this nice moment where Ellie tosses the bouquet over her head, and it starts honing in on Sarah. And Sarah starts panicking. She looks around, and as it comes to her, she bats it away with one hand. And Chuck sees her, and he realizes that he loves her because it's like that's the girl he wants. And then it starts coming towards Anna, and Morgan starts freaking out. And then, Anna misses it, and then it lands in the lap of Morgan's mom. and Big Mike and Morgan's mom are giving the googly eyes, and Morgan's like, oh no.
Oh boy.
So it was a nice moment that that unfortunately had to get cut. It sort of visually tied all the themes together. It was one that Ali Adler lobbied for a lot, and unfortunately it was one that we did have to cut, but hopefully it'll make it to the DVD so you can see it, and it's a very fun, funny moment.
Wow, yeah, I'd love to see that on the DVD. Hopefully, since you have so many more months before the season 2 DVD is released, they have lots of time to put that stuff in.
This podcast will have to suffice. We'll just describe all the deleted scenes for you.
Yeah, describe
but,
video.
I want to thank you and thank all the people that work with you on the podcast and all the fans for continuing the support. I have a Twitter page, and Allie has a Twitter page, and if you guys want to check out some updates from the set and try to get little tidbits from us as much as possible. Keep the love alive.
Great. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us, with the fans, and look forward to meeting you actually in a couple of weeks here.
Yeah, come on out. When you come out, give us a call. We'll find some time for dinner.
Great. Well, so I'll see you then, and until next time, it's been great talking with Matt Barber.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.
Cheers.
And we're back. And, it was awesome. Not only did I meet Matt in LA, but I was actually able to have dinner with him. And he's just a great, great guy. Really, really personable. You can tell a little bit from his Twittering over the last little while. But he's a very, very approachable, really, really nice guy.
It sounds like it. It sounds like, again, everybody that's involved with this show is just nice. It starts from the top and goes all the way down. So it's fun to hear from the people that are putting the show together as well.
Yep. And just a reminder, if you want to follow Matt Barber on Twitter, his handle is BarberMatt. BarberMatt. And he would love to have you follow him. So we're going to wrap things up now. We're getting closer to Christmas, and we want to remind everybody that you can buy Chuck-themed merchandise from a whole bunch of places. You can get it from Chuckazon. You can get DVDs and the Chuck comic book from there, and there's info about that on chuckpodcast.com. You can get Chuck TV and Chuck versus the Podcast themed merchandise. Those are great Christmas gifts as well. And we want to remind you as well, you can follow us on Twitter, either chucktv.net or Gray Jones, and that'll give you up to the second updates on what's happening. And you can also be added to our email notification list by sending an email to mail@chuckpodcast.com with the subject notification.
as always, if you have any questions or comments to share, you can email us at mail@chuckpodcast.com. And as you will have heard already, we do answer those questions on our podcast from time to time, and we'd love to hear from you. So go ahead and send those in, mail@chuckpodcast.com.
And we want to thank our sponsors. Movie Morons Podcast is a great podcast. I urge you to listen to it. You can get the link from chuckpodcast.com. And also SyrianJunkies.de is a fantastic German TV website. And that's all of our regular content, regular as in non-spoilery content. So if you are afraid of spoilers or want to avoid them, just plug your ears, press stop on the podcast. There is nothing more non-spoilery to say.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye. And we're back. We've got spoilers, and so let's get right to it. I'm going to mention that osceolofiles.ew.com is a great place to get spoilers on all kinds of shows, and he often throws Chuck ones in because he loves Chuck, which is great. Mm-hmm. So I urge you to go to Osceola Files, and also you can follow Mike Osceola on Twitter.
It's EW Osceola Files.
Yeah, capital E, capital W. Does the capital matter?
No.
No, okay. EW Osceola Files. And since not everybody knows how to spell Osceola, that's AUSIELLO Files. And you can get lots of cool stuff there. A couple of things that came out of that column. Number one was a question. Now that it's returning in January, Chuck me, spoiler god, Scott.
They get a little flamboyant.
Yeah. And Osceola says, Chuck co-creator Chris Fedak confirms that Anna Wu will be missing in action during season 3's first 13 episodes, but there is a chance she could pop up in the last 6. We're still writing the last 6 episodes, so I don't have anything first on that, he says, but I would love for Anna to come back. Fedak adds that Julia's absence at the Buy More will be referenced early in the season, and I can confirm that.
Yes.
And we've been in touch with Julia frequently, and she loves the show, and she definitely would love to be back. So, hey, we're hoping to.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. And the next question, there's a $5 tuna footlong with you and Mr. Scooch's names on it. If you can give me any Chuck updates, Jen. And Osceola responds with, can you make my half a veggie? If so, you've got a deal. Chris Fedak says the 6 additional episodes that NBC recently tacked on to Chuck Season 3 total created an interesting storytelling challenge. We were faced with the problem of either expanding the story we're telling or taking the story and telling it more slowly. And what we essentially decided to do was tell more story. So we're looking at the 6 episodes that have been added as Chuck Season 3.2. Very cool.
Yeah, I know a lot of fans were concerned about what if there's an extra episode order. How is that going to mess with what we assume is going to be a pretty tight story for the first 13 episodes? So I know that this has alleviated some of the concerns there, and of course they're going to have to do a little bit of tweaking just to make it flow from the last couple of episodes into the next 6. But I think we're all going to be pleased and. I'm interested. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with those last 6 episodes. There's a lot of speculation and a lot of fans saying, I want to see this and I want to see that. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and it is possible that they could schedule a gap. I mean, they could make the finale-ish and then come back with another 6. I mean, it all depends on how it plays out, but
right.
All I know is it's going to be good.
Yeah, we know that.
Yeah.
Well, we have some late-breaking spoilery news. We have the episode title for 312, which is Chuck versus the American Hero. And then there's also a casting call. They're looking for a General Norman Schwarzkopf lookalike. He needs to be about 65, and he's going to play General Schwarzkopf. So, I don't know. Does that say flashback to anybody else?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they're also looking for a hefty Burbank cop. Male, 35 to 45, out of shape, overweight but not huge. He's a Burbank cop who is very excited when some real action takes place on his beat.
Oh, that sounds cool.
Yeah.
Paul Blart, anyone?
Yeah. Except this, I think, is a real cop, not a mall cop.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So, but that was my first thought too. Was a mall cop, but no, I think this is a real cop.
Well, Paul Blart almost made it to the police force.
Did he?
Yeah.
Got to confess, that's not a movie on my list of things to watch.
It was surprisingly good.
Was it?
Yeah, I possibly because I went in with absolutely zero expectations. But it was, surprisingly good.
Still not on my list.
Okay.
But this episode is.
Yep.
See what I did there? Segue.
Anyway, so that's all we got for this week. Next week, we're going to have part 2 of our editor series, and we hope you tune in.
See you next week.
Bye-bye.